Dear champions, the objective of decarbonizing societies in an economically sustainable way requires a strong push to accelerate clean energy innovation. New processes and products in the clean energy sector can reduce the costs of decarbonization and at the same time increase economic productivity and employment. Through research, development and innovation, new and more efficient solutions are created to manufacture existing clean energy technologies or to develop new technologies. By accelerating the development of new, transformative, clean energy technologies, society can not only mitigate against climate change, but can also accelerate economic recovery and build up resilience. This can only work if the immense potential that individual innovators hold to bring new solutions to the market is adequately mobilized. The ingenuity, motivation, and entrepreneurial spirit of these innovators is a truly valuable asset for society. It is in this spirit that the Champions Programme was launched by Mission Innovation and supported by the European Commission. The specific aim was to activate a new generation of innovators working on clean energy technologies. These innovators, you, are the real engines of transformative change in the energy sector. And our role is to remove all barriers and gaps for your potential to be fully tapped. Now, the Mission Innovation Champions Programme has reached the end of its first phase. This program was a success. The new phase of Mission Innovation should further leverage the potential of individual innovators to create appetite for innovation across all sectors of society. Because clean energy innovation will not accelerate if we do not build on all talents, whichever the age, gender, and social origin. I wish you the best of luck in helping to pilot the next phase of this exciting initiative, for which you have my continued full support.
Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Child. I'm Deputy Director General for Research and Innovation in the European Commission and Chair of the Mission Innovation Steering Committee. And I'm very happy to have the opportunity to be the moderator of this important Mission Innovation Ministerial side event devoted to the theme of Back to the Future innovation of innovators, bridging the gap between ideas, innovations, markets to accelerate clean energy innovation. And with this event, we're excited to celebrate the conclusion of the first edition of the Mission Innovation Champions Programme. This programme has been highly successful pillar of our first phase of Mission Innovation, and over the last 3 years, 40 outstanding innovators have been profiled globally for their active role in accelerating the clean energy transition. So we very much hope that the international recognition and visibility that we've provided to these innovators by the Champions Award has helped them to further boost their roles as innovation leaders. And today, we want to step up the public dialogue we started with the champions at the 5th Mission Innovation Ministerial event in Riyadh last September. And so the objective of today's roundtable is to discuss with the champions and young innovators how we, as policymakers, can best develop them to leverage their potential to bring to full speed the clean energy transition. And so the ambitious decarbonisation commitments that Mission Innovation members have put forward can only be met with the sort of extraordinary collective efforts that we're seeing to accelerate clean energy innovation. And innovators have to be the real engines of our clean energy transition, and our role as Mission Innovation member governments is to support them in the best way forward. And therefore, I'd like now to kick off our proceedings with a keynote introduction from our hosts for the Mission Innovation meeting from the Energy Ministry in Chile. Gabriel Prudencio Flano is head of the Renewable Energies Division at the Chilean Ministry of Energy. Before joining the ministry, he was operations manager of Valhalla, a company that develops pumped storage and photovoltaic plants in northern Chile. So he has an excellent perspective, I think, to bring together this dynamic of what innovation can bring and the partnership that we need with our innovators community. So Gabriel, over to you, please.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to all the organizers for putting this event together. on a more broader basis, also welcome to everybody to this 2021 SEM MI gathering, which for the second time will take place in this online format, which may have some downsides, but also I think we also have appreciated during this last time all the upsides that we see from here, and allows us definitely to put this events together with more people, and to have also more people that can see and can be part of this in some part. There will be more than 50 events available, or are happening during this week, more than 50 events, that all of them will be available through our platform, which also we are invite all of you to visit them and to explore there, of course, the events, but also the networking opportunities and the opportunities to meet other people as well. SEMMI this year is based on four main focuses, four main keywords, I would say. One of them is collaboration, and it has to do, we have been collaborating a lot during the last time, of course, in the last decades, but how we can collaborate effectively, something that we also want to highlight and we want to work, we want to explore as well. Secondly, how we address social gaps. We know that there are gender gaps, there are gaps in technologies, there are gaps in labor skills, different type of gaps around the world that we have to address so that we don't leave anybody behind in this challenge of addressing carbon neutrality and the energy transition. New actors would be an important pillar as well, how we can include new actors. Huge challenges will require new actors as well. And as a fourth main pillar, we highlight the importance of action. Our slogan in last COP was time for action, and we want to inherit that for SEMMI as well, and how from all of these we can create specific actions that will address or allow us to address the different challenges that we face. And how we can bridge gaps between ideas, innovation, and markets to accelerate the clean energy innovations will require a lot of collaboration, addressing social gaps, new actors, and of course a lot of action. So all of that I think is in line with what we're doing. What are the challenges that we're facing, not only in Chile but around the world? One of them is of course climate change, that we know and science has been clear that is already affecting and will affect in the future even more, especially to the most vulnerable in this world. So I think we have, for any point of view that you look at it, an important challenge to address that, not only for environmental point of view, but also from a point of view of the economics and the social impacts that may have. Chile already committed. Chile was actually the first developed countries to commit to be carbon neutral by 2050, so by mid this century. And Chile has based its commitment through, it's not only a commitment, it's actually a plan that we have put in place to address this, and it's based on four main pillars. One of them is to, and all of them have important challenges, both in innovation and also, of course, rely on existing technologies as well. One pillar has to do with retiring our coal power plants and the existing fleet, which already produces about 40% of our electricity generation, and how we combine that with the acceleration of renewables that we have seen in Chile in the last years. E-mobility will have an important role as well. Second point, energy efficiency. We expect actually the most energy or the carbon reductions from energy efficiency, and hydrogen is something that we see as well will have an important role as well. And of course, opportunities in innovation in all of those topics are important. Of course, as said before, we rely of course in existing technologies as well, but what we will do with all the solar, or how we will recycle all the solar panels and batteries that we're installing today, how we will lower the implementation cost of winds, and how we will allow the wind technologies to work in extreme conditions, how we will enhance smart grids so that allows technologies access for everybody, how we will work innovative solutions for heating and cooling, for example, in buildings that we know that will be have growing demands in developing countries. In hydrogen, of course, as well, there are important challenges as well in transport, in compressors, in technologies, in how we will lower cost, and all of that. Chile, I will not get into details here about what we have done in innovation and research. We have put in place, perhaps to highlight one topic, a Clean Technology Institute that will have fundings for $50 million a year. $10 million a year for the next 10 years, and another fund for hydrogen for $50 million. So it's some of the topics that we're doing. We may not be high in the rankings of the world, but we have ranked number 1 in the last Global Innovation Index from 2020. And what we do know is the importance of understanding the strengths and the weaknesses that we may have, and that we are sure will provide the basis to a collaborative work. And from there, we also want to highlight this importance of this event that will give us the place to discuss all of this, and it will allow us to work in a collaborative way to address social gaps, to include also new actors, and to have a lot of time for action as well. Thank you very much.
Gabriel, thank you very much for that, and congratulations to Chile, to our Chilean hosts, not only for your amazing progress domestically, but for hosting such a magnificent series of meetings this week. And we're really grateful for all the work that you and your team have put in. And I'd like to come to another long-standing friend of Mission Innovation, Paul Durant, who is head of the end-use sectors and bioenergy department of the International Renewable Energy Agency, and a former head of the Mission Innovation Secretariat. And I think Paul is looking forward to sharing some of his experiences with this vital question of how we can bring innovators to exploit their full potential in support of the clean energy transition. Paul, over to you, please.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Great to be here. I was asked to share some perspectives from Irina on the barriers hindering the transition of innovations from deployment, from development to deployment, and on strategies that support that transition. Now, stating the blindingly obvious, innovation is a complex process, and I think clean energy innovation even more so. So with the following, I'm not really afraid offering solutions, but I'm just offering some perceptions that maybe spark debate. I really welcome pushback on anything that follows, particularly from our Mission Innovation champions who are living and breathing innovation, not just observing it as I do. I'm focusing here on public sector support, but of course it's critical that's closely linked to the private sector. I think it's worth saying up front that the landscape of public sector support for clean energy innovation in many countries has strengthened greatly in the last decade or so. We've collectively learned a lot from our past successes and our failures. But this next phase of the energy transition poses new challenges. So the first point I want to make is that the policy context has changed in many countries. The new deep decarbonisation and net zero emission goals that many countries have set and the rapid transition needed to get there really are game changers. And I'm not sure that all decision makers have yet to fully internalise what that net zero goal really means. It means, amongst other things, that we do need to be consistent in our focus on that and everything we do moving us towards that goal. And it rules out solutions that merely partially reduce emissions unless they're stepping stones towards deeper cuts. It also means we have almost no time left. The pace and scale is daunting. We need a 10-fold increase in renewable deployment, a 5-fold increase in hydrogen production, a 3-fold increase in sustainable biomass supply. And that means we can't afford to let innovation gradually emerge. We need to force the pace, we need to find solutions, and we need to not go down too many blind alleys. So let's talk a little bit about barriers. I'm not going to list some of the usual suspects which we all know about, regulatory frameworks, financial instruments, though they're certainly very valid and real issues. But let me focus instead on some misconceptions and confusions that may be barriers to smart action by decision makers. I picked 4, I could have added more, and they're not universally true, but they certainly occur more often than is desirable. First up, we get the impression that senior decision makers and the wider community often see innovation differently to those of us who are closely involved in the process. We need to improve their understanding and manage expectations. Innovation and invention are not synonyms. The perception from some that innovation is mainly about breakthrough inventions, dreaming up something completely new and exciting. In the energy sector, at least, the majority of innovation comes through a long, hard slog of gradual, iterative improvements with the occasional jump forward. And that's important because given the 2050 timeline, most of what we will use at scale in 2050 will already have been invented now, in the sense that someone's thought of it and tried it in some way. It may be too expensive or too fiddly or unreliable, but it's there to some degree. IRENA's 1.5 degree scenario is built on that premise to show how we can reach net zero with the building blocks we have today. It's the pace of deployment that's lacking. Point 2, the valley of death is a term we use a lot. I'm not sure it's that helpful a term. It implies there's one thing to fix. In practice, there is not just one valley of death. There are multiple, and they vary in nature and in the context. So support really needs to be tailored, flexible, staged, consistent, and predictable to bridge those multiple valleys. Point 3, some of us are still thinking too linearly about innovation. And the terminology we use doesn't help. The term RD&D and the TRL concept implies this sort of steady progression. And innovation is certainly a journey, but it's one with many false turns and occasionally circling back on oneself. We need to ensure that the support recognizes that and persists throughout. And we too often think about technology innovation in isolation. It's systemic innovation that delivers solutions that actually get deployed. And that means from early on, thinking about how the technology can work with new ways of operating systems, with innovative business models, and be enabled by innovations in finance and policy. In IRENA, we've done a lot of work on this. Our innovation landscape for renewable powered future projects showcased successes and provides a toolbox for creating solutions that, when combined, address those different innovation dimensions and have real world impact. Our next phase of work is focused on a similar systemic perspective for electrification of end-use sectors. So those are some of the problems. What strategies have we seen that might work? I want to highlight 6 points. Building a shared understanding of what's needed is an important starting point. What are the end goals? Where are the innovation gaps? And then communicating that clearly. Getting as many people as possible on the same page helps in collaborating and deconflicting and inspires new thinking. It requires a lot of discussion and debate across key stakeholders, but it's certainly not one body dreaming it up in isolation. We need to reach beyond technology innovation to deliver those systemic innovation solutions, and innovators may need to be proactive and innovative beyond their technology, pairing it with a new business model or saying to policymakers, what my technology really needs to have impact is X. We need to blur the line between commercial and pre-commercial. In regulated market, what's really commercial at the end of the day? One approach works very effectively in many contexts is linking innovation to public or indeed front-running companies' procurement strategies. Lots of companies and governments want to be seen to be green and may pay a premium for it. Provide a portfolio of support mechanisms that fit the different needs and evolve over time. Forward planning, visible to innovators and investors, is necessary so they know that when they get to that next milestone, there will at least be opportunities to bid for funding for that next step. Building public and private consortia around specific shared challenges can really have impact. It's easier in the early stages of innovation, but it does also work well on shared topics where participants don't see themselves losing competitive advantage. And finally, we can use international cooperation to create breadth and scale of innovation effort. I said earlier, we need to let many flowers bloom, but we don't always need to joint fund things or share commercially sensitive information. If country X is funding A and B, then if they know that, country Y might choose to fund B, C, and D. And the dialogue between countries can really enable that. Well, I think that's pretty much my time up. You may not agree with all of the above. I think there were many other things that I could have highlighted, but I hope it's helpful in sparking some thoughts and stimulating debate. Many thanks for your attention.
Extremely, Paul, thank you very much. Very, very thought-provoking, and I think sets the scene very well for the rest of our discussion. So for this round table, we're going to have interventions firstly from 5 of our mission innovation champions from around the world. We'll then hear from one industry representative, and then one young innovator engaged in promoting clean energy innovation. I think we all recognize that in a fast-changing world, innovators need to rapidly adapt to a changing context and preserve their unique vantage point from which they can gain valuable insights. And so our aim with this roundtable is to hear from these innovators, to share their first-hand experiences in advancing innovation from the development and demonstration stages into commercial maturity and in promoting more generally clean energy innovation. And I think that these stories from our innovators are going to be a valuable source of inspiration for us policymakers. And I think that this sort of symbiotic relationship between the innovative community on the one hand and the policymakers and the governments represented in mission innovation will help us to identify the sort of barriers that exist and what policy instruments can work in order to help overcome those barriers. So without further ado, I'd like to move on to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to introduce them individually, and then I'm going to ask one question from each. And I'm going to start with Jafar Benabou. He is
Hello.
manager and co-founder of Solar E-Cycles and Morocco's Magazine Innovation Champion for 2020. And Jafar, I mean, we're very happy to have you with us. And of course, you're deeply committed to making clean mobility a possibility for Africa in an affordable way through innovative solar electric tricycles. And so I'd like to ask you a few questions flowing from that, if I may. I mean, firstly, what do you think is needed to speed up the adoption of these innovative technologies in Africa? Is it just a question of financial incentives, information and infrastructure, or is there something missing, some other ingredient that you point to? And most importantly, how can you think governments can help you in removing the sort of barriers that you've faced as an innovator and an entrepreneur in developing and rolling out these very innovative clean energy products? So Jafar, you're very welcome, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving the word. Well, I think that the most important thing to speed up adoption of innovative technology in mobility, particularly, is to prepare at first a global standard and laws concerning the use and the marketing of this innovative technology. So serious coordination and partnership between private and public sectors with the purpose to structure the market of electric mobility and keep trust of users toward this technology, this new technology, and even more make it stronger. So as you know, Morocco has seen a rapid boost in ICE vehicles during the last years, as far as the rest of African country. So e-mobility is for us the opportunity to inverse the trend, and this is the best time, the best moment to do it from a long-time perspective. The second question, I think that removing custom barriers in some African countries would be a good start, making access more easy for people suffering from lack of mobility or users shift in EV alternatives is necessary. Also, there is a need to develop recharging infrastructure, supported and installing bonus taxes for responsible and durable technology would be encouraging. In order to make it possible, we need an important partnership and the proximity between private and public sectors. So for the last question, we're currently in Morocco working with governments and the public sectors, public organization involving in standards and law in the electric mobility area in order to secure the market and make it more structured, in order to make more easy to sell and to market those kind of technology and those innovations. Thank you.
Jafar, thank you very much indeed, and congratulations again on the success of your work and your products. And I'm sure that your message on the need for partnership between the policymakers and government and successful industry and on the basis of trust is a very important message for us.
Exactly.
Our next
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next speaker today is Panima Jalilhal, a senior scientist who heads the Energy and Freshwater Group at the Indian National Institute of Ocean Technology. And Panima is the 2020 Mission Innovation Champion for India, and we congratulate you on your success in that important role. And Penny, I'd like to ask you, from your experiences in successfully demonstrating ocean energy technologies, what can you tell us about the challenges that you've encountered in your efforts to scale up and reduce costs of ocean energy technologies? And what do you think your government should do in order further to promote ocean energy innovation in India?
Hello, and thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts. So yes, clean energy is or has assumed a lot of importance today in India. Of course, the focus has been solar and wind. There are targets that have been set up for the next few years. But I'm handling ocean energy, and ocean energy is still in infancy in India. We have developed small off-grid devices for harnessing power from waves and marine currents, especially tidal streams. Now, these are just small off-grid demonstration kind of devices. And to answer your question, I'm facing a lot of challenge for the scaling up of these devices. The first problem that we face here is the lack of confidence or the perceived risks, because it's an ocean technology. As you all know, there are a lot of environmental conditions to deal with in the ocean. And so there's always a fear that ocean energy devices may not really withstand for a long time. The next issue is that because solar has become so popular, there's a tendency to sort of compare the costs of solar with any new renewable like ocean energy. And we all know that even solar has taken decades to come to this level and this cost. And therefore, it's a bit unfair to have to compare it with solar right at the beginning stages. What we need to do is develop large prototypes and demonstration of devices offshore so that we can come to know the real viability. Of course, the Indian government is funding an ocean thermal energy conversion project to power desalination in an island in Lakshadweep in the Arabian Sea. And this is like under 100 kilowatts, but it's a large enough project which will be enabling us to scale up for much higher ratings. The other issue in India is that the offshore infrastructure is not very good. And so everything is capital intensive, deployments, installations all become very, very expensive. And hence, it's a vicious circle wherein funding becomes more and more difficult. There is a need today for the Indian government to fund large prototype demonstrations offshore, and also a megawatt range offshore platform mounted ocean thermal energy conversion or OTEC plant, which will enable us to understand the technical as well as the commercial viability. Even the demonstration projects like this can lead to job creation and capacity building for offshore installations and deployments. Lastly, I would like to say that the Indian government has taken a step forward. They have declared ocean energy as a renewable now, so developers can, take the renewable purchase obligations just like solar and wind. We are moving in the right step ahead, and I'm sure we will see more government intervention in the near future. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Purnima, and thanks for sharing with us your story. And I think that you capture very well the sort of challenge of overcoming the valley of death, which Paul Durant mentioned in his remarks a few moments ago, but also highlighting the importance of government and public support for scaling up the promising new technologies, which are, of course, need to be de-risked and demonstrate their potential alongside existing clean technologies. So a really rich and interesting experience. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for joining us again today. Yeah? So I move next to our next successful innovator, which is Michaela Kendall, who is the CEO of Adelan, one of the world's first fuel cell businesses. Michaela has managed industrial R&D programs funded by various governments, but was successfully awarded in 2020 the Mission Innovation Championship for the United Kingdom. And so congratulations on that success. And Michaela, you've been working, I think, internationally with a range of different governments, businesses and institutes over your very distinguished career. And I would like, I think, to hear from you your experience on what has held back the scaling up of innovations and how can we accelerate scaling up and deployment of new technologies that have been successfully demonstrated, in particular using the sort of international cooperation mechanisms that we have, like mission innovation in the clean energy space. So Michaela, please.
Thank you so much. And firstly, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have my voice heard today. So thank you so much, and the kind introduction also. I'm conscious that actually many women that I started on this tech journey with 30 years ago are no longer in hydrogen tech. So I feel a responsibility today to represent them and also the younger generations of women who would like to be part of this huge technical opportunity. So my comments today are in part on behalf of those women without a voice. And I want to be honest about my experience and tell you the difference that using a single policy could make. So my career to date has been tough, and most of the challenges I've chosen. So I've moved between technologies and disciplines, institutions and countries, and it's given me a really unique international view of public and private tech programs and also behaviours, human behaviours. I've massively enjoyed the international aspects of collegiate and competitive science. I've enjoyed the teamwork, the shared life experiences, and of course the dinners and the social aspects. And I've been really encouraged by senior scientists to pursue my own tech and scientific agenda. But in all of the countries that I've worked in, I have met with sexist attitudes and behaviours. And I believe, honestly, that this has slowed progress for me and for other women. And ultimately that slowed innovation and technical uptake and decarbonisation. So I can't really believe it's still an issue in 2021. And, you can think back to Marie Curie, who also experienced it 100 years ago. We really need to address this. And I think one single option is available to us to do so. So today I'd like to call a time for action on the lack of funding going to women in science and business. Removing these economic barriers to women will remove some of the sexism that is sadly alive and well in some universities and governments around the world. So when I helped to set up the UN Hydrogen Centre in Istanbul and the EU Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking in Brussels, which is a €2 billion programme, I didn't expect that almost all of the money would go to male scientists. I wasn't even really aware that that was happening until I started to question why I couldn't get independently funded, even by the bodies that I helped to create. So when I asked the UK government for the stats on female funding, for example, when I was rejected from the Engineering and Physical Science Research Council, they actually didn't want to tell me about they didn't want to be transparent. So I had to make them tell me. And it turned out that only 6.7% of funding the year that I applied went to women from the Engineering and Physical Science Research Council. And I really immediately understood why I've never really been funded as a principal investigator by my own government. Very few women have. So I now only put male names at the top of my proposals, and I moved into building a clean tech business. I voted with my feet, and I went into business thinking that this would be a better opportunity. But a few years later, I found that only 1% of equity investments go to female-led businesses. And I was stunned, and I hope everyone here is stunned also. So my request today is clear. Science funding in international programs must be 50-50, female and male. Science doesn't have a gender, but clearly science and technology funding today does. That skews technical, economic, geopolitical, and global governance in a breathtaking, clean power grab by male scientists. This is not a good strategy for any one of us. So my ask is clear today. International programs should have a 50% female funding target to demonstrate and to orchestrate real commitment to genuine environmental and social governance, ESG, and corporate and social responsibility, CSR, compliance. really, I think we must include gender equality in both of those definitions. In terms of policy, there must be robust definitions. And really, we cannot say that an investment is ESG or CSR compliant if only 1% of the resources is going to 50% of the population. We know the benefits of mixed gender teams. We know that women are 50% of the market. We know diversity of thought stimulates innovation. Leadership in COVID, women leaders performed well. Mixed gender boards make more money. They pay themselves less. So everyone must reflect on increasing equality to improve innovation. And I really believe that this step supports the entire next generation, not just half of the next generation. We must all get comfortable with supporting 50-50. And the next generation will ask you and I about fairness. And we have to now engage with the tidal wave of women scientists that are coming into this field. Thank you so much.
And some very powerful, thank you very much, some very powerful messages and points there, and some very, very revealing statistics. And indeed, I think you underline an extremely important dimension of the challenge that we face. I mean, our Commissioner, Maria Gabriel, responsible for research and innovation, has been strongly supporting the efforts we're making at a European level, as you know, to build diversity, equal opportunity, and gender into the way that we manage the European research programs. But it's a global challenge, I know, and your experiences in other parts of the world, I think, are also very relevant. So thank you for sharing that with us today. If I may now move on to our next speaker. Christian O'Ryan is the founder of Endurance Electric, a social company that seeks to alleviate energy poverty for vulnerable families in Chile and Latin America, and he was the 2020 Mission Innovation Champion for Chile. So Christian, my question for you is about your work on innovative technology adoption models for decentralized solar energy, which we see as playing an important role in the fight against energy poverty in rural communities. And I guess what we'd like to hear is what your advice to governments would be about how best to facilitate your and other social entrepreneurs working through clean energy innovation policies. And what are the barriers that they can help you as governments to overcome in order to make your work have an even more powerful impact? So, Christian, over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here. I think social entrepreneurship is a very important part in order to fight against energy poverty, and supporting these kind of ventures and entrepreneurs behind and their teams is a key role. I believe there is a user-centered design methodology behind the work of these organizations because we are on the field most of the time. And that leads to a lot of on-the-field knowledge that these entrepreneurs are capturing from families that I'm sure are pretty useful for other organizations, especially governments, in order to design policies. Rural communities are often very hard to reach and involve more time and resources. The market is often not well developed, if there's any market at all. So maybe this is the kind of support that social venture needs at early stage, like programs that help to form a new market, but focusing on the user. I mean, for example, if there's going to be a financial aid or financial help for families, let's give them to the final users who will be able to choose from different suppliers rather than the company itself. Also, putting the energy concept into the national agenda, I think is super important, because since most of the population don't really know what is this, that this problem really exists, at least I'm talking at a local, national level here in Chile. So most of the people assume that this problem is already solved, which is not, especially in rural areas. I believe that creating or leading instances for collaboration and communication that involves all the parts, including the final user, the people that is going to be impacted, but also different organizations, not only government, but also social, local organizations, private entrepreneurs. I think it's a factor that will really help to move faster and stronger in order to fight this problem. Direct support with resources like financial support, knowledge, and networks will also help social entrepreneurs to deploy more pilot programs that often are very risky for our organizations, but could be super important and impactful for people in a later stage if those pilots turn to be successful. We could and we should face this risk together because it's a national problem. There's also an important need to talk and speak at a more, like I would say, like an informal level, communicating to normal people at our houses. I mean, solar energy is something that people already know something about it. We look at the solar panels in the house, we look at the television, we read it in the news, but it's often, in my opinion, it seems like very big, like industrial economic news. So why not share stories from local normal people at a household level? We need more and deeper stories from people that is using solar and renewable energy, from entrepreneurs also and local organizations that are doing something about this. If we are able to do this more, I believe that we will be able to close the gap of energy poverty for thousands of families. These families, remember, are also facing climate change effects in a faster and bigger way. Thus, renewable energy, especially solar energy, knowledge at the household level is key to a real adoption of this technology for the people in the country. Thank you very much.
Christian, thank you very much for sharing with us your experience of that rather different dimension, but nevertheless very, very important, of how sometimes we forget that the pace and scale of the energy transition that we are contemplating with our efforts to meet the Paris objectives are going to have profound social and economic consequences. And so the work that you're doing, particularly in the communities that you're working with with poverty and rural areas, is so vitally important, and your experience is very valuable. So look, I think we've heard now from the four champions from the Mission Innovation Program that we were looking forward to. And I'd like to now move on to a little bit more the industry perspective. And we're really lucky to have with us Maurizio Beccecceri. So he is head of the Latin America region of Enel, one of the largest global energy companies, of course. And Maurizio has spent his professional career, including several management positions in Europe, in the Americas, and in the Middle East, working for different energy and mining companies. And so I think really well placed to share with us the perspective of industry in this important dynamic. And so my question, Maurizio, would perhaps to kick off your remarks would be really just looking at the discussion from the perspective of a global industrial player like Enel. And the company, of course, which has put forward an ambitious low-carbon investment plan. What role do you see for research, development, and innovation in achieving the ambitious decarbonization targets that we've all set? And how can governments enable industry to maximize the uptake of innovative technologies? And what do you see as the place of the sort of success stories that we have heard from the successful innovators on our Champions program in contributing to the broader work of a big company like yours?
Thank you, Patrick. Let's start saying that sustainability is the core of Enel strategy, and this strategy is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations and the Paris Agreement target. This strategy allows us today to have something like 46,000 megawatts of renewable energy and serve 75 million of end users with our grids. Of course, what's the target of these innovative technologies and clean technologies is just to maximize the positive impact for our customer, worker, and more in general, the wider community that are around our plant. Of course, this kind of approach needs a multi-layer approach. And we boost innovation, we push for circular economy, we, of course, take care of cybersecurity, we have digitalization of our process and product, and of course, we move for sustainable finance. Regarding innovation, we have a specific approach. We have an open innovability model. It's a common platform that allows our company, our business line, our function to enter in contact with startup, industrial partners, small and medium enterprise, research center, and university. What we have spread all over the world as well is innovation hub that are a sort of catalyzer for startups in the different countries where we operate. What the result of this open platform is that we have right now in operation more or less 800 partnership at group level to address new challenge and opportunities. The majority, many of them are focused on boosting digital services to our client for energy efficiencies and management. The second part of your question regarding government, Enel, of course, we strongly believe in public-private partnership and open cooperation with all stakeholders just to speed up the energy transition and work for a sustainable transformation of the society. In this respect, the role of governments and other stakeholders is fundamental. For this purpose, we have built up another open platform that works on energy transition roadmaps. What is the target of this platform? Is just to define the right mix of policies for a just energy transition. And in this platform works governmental institutions, ONG, companies, and many other players, stakeholders that can has some insight and vision for the future. As well, in this work of energy, sustainable energy transition roadmaps, we work at different type of level. Education and training with the Enel Foundation, research and innovation with the open innovability platform, as I said before. Industrial operation, we use a stewardship model, we push for circular economy as well. Suppliers and customer, we have digitalized platform for a scalable approach worldwide. And financial investor. That means sustainable finance and SDG linked bonds. Energy transition, of course, needs a common ground with the local governments, and we have several examples of this kind of innovation. We have electric mobility in Chile and Colombia, renewable energy in Chile, Colombia, Brazil, and Peru. Future ability in Brazil, that means smart lighting and circular and smart city, electrification in Peru, green hydrogen in Chile. Like in Europe, I think that Latin America needs to take the example of Europe, in which, as you know better than me, the majority of green recovery of the recovery of the economy is based on green solution. Finally, I think that the key roles of government is mostly related in the redefinition of policy and regulatory frameworks that can help innovation just to spread up all all over the sector. And finally, you asked me what can be the role of this innovation. I think it can be fundamental in the way in which we can work as a grid, as a network, because nobody can do everything alone. So we need just a strong cooperation, bringing the solution to the real needs of population. Thanks.
Well, Maurizio, thank you very much for sharing with us your very diverse and comprehensive experiences, but also your valuable and I think inspiring perspective from the work of NL and other large industrial actors in this field. So thank you very much for being with us. We now move to the final section of our discussion, our roundtable today, where we're going to have a sort of fireside exchange between two key interlocutors, Meredith Adler from Student Energy and Maria Luisa Hernandez La Torre, who is the co-founder and CEO of Ingelia, a company based in Spain, leading an industrial initiative to recover carbon and other elements from organic waste and to produce biomaterials. And Maria Luisa is the champion for the European Commission on behalf of the EU. And Meredith Adler, who is going to be interacting with her, is the executive director of Student Energy, who therefore oversees the strategy and operations of the Student Energy organization, and is working to build a movement of students and young people across the world committed to a sustainable energy future. So I'd like to start just by proposing a question for Meredith. Today, many young innovators are facing challenges of getting resources and networks necessary to get their ideas deployed. What do you think government should do more to help young innovators in particular to bridge these gaps?
Yeah, I think that governments, first of all, need to acknowledge that currently getting into the innovation ecosystem requires a level of power and privilege that really isn't accessible to most young people. And so it's creating a really large missed opportunity because many young people are perfectly positioned within their communities to be these real accelerators of deployment of innovation. And so the main thing governments need to think about doing is building programs outside of universities that really allow for development of deployment skills through coaching and mentorship opportunities, but also to really address the funding gap for young innovators. Young innovators, it takes them between 5 to 10 years often to get their first piece of funding. And that's really an unnecessary level of lead time and really leaving behind a lot of innovation, a lot of ability to deploy. And I think particularly speaking to the aspect of women in innovation, or people who lack the privilege to be self-funded while they wait for that level of funding. Our current network at Student Energy is about 50% women with 50,000 young people in 120 different countries. And we know that today, that's not the statistics when you look at the innovation landscape. And so I think governments can do a big part in helping to close that gap by really thinking about how to directly get funding to young people and then how to really expand the skill building opportunities outside of just the university ecosystem.
Great. Thanks. I think now you're going to interact with Maria Luisa.
Yes, so Maria Luisa, I also have a few questions for you. So as I just mentioned, funding is often at the center of conversations and innovation. What has been your experience with the investment community, and how have government research and development programs been helpful? And then do you feel like they were really successfully working together with your work in different innovations?
Well, thank you, Meredith, and thank you very much, Mission Innovation, as well for your support. We have developed a new industrial development from scratch, and since the beginning, we closed 5 increased capital rounds, having attracted capital for 3.5 million euros and debt for 4 million euros. And we invested all in technology and products development. Besides to this, we have also sold 6 million euros in plants for clients, so that we have currently a balance sheet of around 12 million and are working on Series B investment to finance companies' growth and international deployment. So we could say, or we can say, our experience with the investment community has been successful. However, and despite of the good company's finance structure, because we have 50% is capital and 50% is debt, not always it has been easy to get financed. And I think because innovative projects should have specific evaluation tools from the financing perspective in terms of risk measurement and growth opportunities. One important thing to be considered in industrial innovation is that CapEx is much higher compared to developments at lab scale. And therefore, the risk perceived by the investors is higher as well. And that makes industrial innovation really difficult to finance. In my opinion, it is key to align investors' interests with companies' objectives since the very beginning, and not only in terms of money, but also in terms of total value. We looked for investors that could contribute with additional value to the company's development based on their previous experience and knowledge in business creation and involving them at the board of directors. Being able to couple private and public funding is key. On one hand, the capital that the company gets is increased. And on the other hand, investors get additional confidence since the project needs to successfully pass a diligence made by a high-level group of experts from the public institutions in order to be selected for funding. I think it is also very important to acknowledge the different phases of the project development and attract the key stakeholders from the industry, science, financing, and markets. The investors want to see capacity to scale. They want good company expectations and ambitious business plan. And in order to do that, the company needs to work in sales, capital raising, and technology development at the same time without or with very low access to finance yet. And this phase can take longer than expected. So here is where public funding plays a very important role. Programs of financing, the go-to-market strategy are key for the innovators, including, for example, financing of working capital, project financing, warranties to cover the first years of plant operations, or funding for demonstrations plants.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think the other clear challenge for innovation often is regulation. So what obstacles have you faced in trying to implement new innovations, especially if regulators haven't yet considered it? And how can governments ease the burden of deploying innovation?
Well, indeed, regulations are very important. And I would recommend to starting as soon as possible working on them in order to shorten the time to market. Regulations usually come after product development, and therefore they need to be implemented quickly in order to facilitate market penetration of new technologies. Environmental certifications, working on committees for standardizations of new products, project permitting, etc., suppose an intensive work for the innovators. And besides to this, people working in the public administration often are not experts in new technologies. So on one hand, they need more time for the evaluation of the technologies. And on the other hand, the company could be working on the same permitting process in different places as well. And I think, for example, that arranging a group of experts at national level around every key innovative technology that could provide support to public administrations on the evaluation and that could take part in the technical committees for standardization of new products, this would be a good solution. The companies will need to follow up in any case and support these activities, but at the end, this would extremely help companies to accelerate their market entrance, I think.
I think that's a fantastic point. Well, thank you so much for sharing both of those pieces with me. I think it's inspiring to see innovators like you in the mission innovation ecosystem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marie-Louise and Meredith, for that exchange. And I think you've really had an excellent sort of closing sort of contribution to what's been for me an extremely rich and interesting discussion, drawing on the real sort of strength of experience and the stories from our innovators from the Champions program and how that fits into the work we're doing as governments. So I'd like to conclude by thanking everyone for your inputs. Thanks to all the speakers. Thanks to our Chilean hosts for in organizing this event and for including it in the program of the Mission Innovation and Clean Energy Ministerial Summit. And I think that taking forward this conversation is going to be very important in future. I think what we've heard today is a number of very important themes. Firstly, the importance of partnership, of having governments and the innovation community working together. Secondly, the importance of getting the regulatory framework right and ensuring that policymakers understand the context in which our innovation communities are striving to succeed. And a big part of their ability to make progress is, of course, financing. And that's the third thing that I'd like to mention, which has come up repeatedly. Financing to support all phases of the innovation and commercial deployment journey, from the earliest research through to scaling up and commercial exploitation. We've heard the importance of equal access to research and funding opportunities, with particular emphasis on gender equality. And I think that that is a theme which we should certainly focus on very strongly in our future work in this area. We've heard about the necessary attention, not just to technological development, but also to ensuring that there is socio-economic acceptance and a good environment in which our new technologies are being developed. And I think that the work in particular of bringing clean, affordable energy solutions to rural communities is vitally important in that context. And we've heard many other ideas as well in what has been, I think, a wide-ranging and very productive discussion. And so on behalf of the Mission Innovation community, on behalf of the steering committee, of which I'm proud to be the chair, and on behalf of all the ministers who've been working together to forge a path for clean energy innovation over the last days, I want to thank all of you for your participation, everybody who has listened to this event, and I hope that it has inspired us all with some really exciting new ideas and opportunities which we can take forward as we work on the clean energy innovation journey from now, I hope, to the COP26 meeting, which we will have later in the year, which I think will be a landmark event, which will define in many ways the future of our capacity to address climate change and the vitally important contribution of clean energy innovation in that context. So thank you all very much for joining us today. Thanks to the organizers of this session, which have technically, I think, worked very smoothly. And I wish you all an excellent day. Thank you.